Anyway, hello everyone. Before we start, I just want to preface this. I don't know a lot about Judge Dredd. Most of
I
my
do.
yes, Fable does. He's read the actual factual comics. Well,
Hmm.
my knowledge is mostly relegated to the Dredd movie, which is a very good movie, and I fully recommend it. I always
Excellent.
I love the before we start. I just want to say I love the weaponry in that movie though, and the way the clothes look. Anyway, go ahead.
I just want to say this. I don't know how many people know this, but because of the fact that due to the original Judge Dredd run of the comics, the original British run, they actually had him age in real time. I told Matt this before, but
Hmm.
every time a new year happened, Judge would actually age along with the year, which I thought was really cool because they didn't want him to feel like I don't think they wanted him to be a stagnant superhero never aging. They wanted it to feel a bit more realistic because at the end of the day, Dredd is a living
Yeah.
human being. So they wanted it to make more sense in the fact that he's going to age and he's going to get slower as age passes by. So yeah,
Yeah. On that
there you
note, I know my mic isn't that close and I need to up the volume a bit. But on that note, how should I put this? I do want to one day make my own comics and mostly just create them and make comic dubs for them so we can basically get as close as I could afford to animation. But yeah. So,
actually, I've
well,
been thinking about that too, about something, but I'll tell you later.
okay. Like I have a plenty of ideas. Like I've told Fable all of my ideas pretty much. He's the one guy I usually go to when I'm just have a sporadic thought. Well, him and Met and whatnot, and the other writer people I know. Anyway, let's head into
He's being
learn.
the mid shot.
Oh my god, I just throw my ideas at you.
He's being the
Anyway, if you want us to learn more about Judge Dredd, specifically me, comment down below. I'd be happy to learn more.
When the British anthology comic 2000 AD debuted in 1977, the UK was mired in rampant inflation, in a
Oh,
cost of living crisis, and
that
increasing
explains
class
this.
tension.
That
One
explains a
growing
lot.
concern for the UK's poor and marginalised was the increasing militarisation of the police.
Oh,
1977 marked the first year that British police used riot shields on domestic soil. It's also
really?
the same year that New Scientist magazine published this article linking the use of riot shields with the rise of civilian injury. Because it turns out, coppers immediately started using these things to bash people over the head.
Yeah, that's not that surprising.
As the 1970s closed out, Judge Dredd's writers and artists started to take more direct influence from the news and from current affairs. Dredd's writers and artists...
Well, that's kind of how it works, isn't it? Life influences art, whether we
yeah,
whether we realize it or not. That just happens.
and it just got to the point where if a story references stuff that's actually happens, a lot of people get butthurt, and because
Oh,
people are scared of actually being honest anymore, they
it's
back
also the
down.
fact of when someone tries to stay relevant by doing dumb meme stuff. That's also a
Yeah,
problem. Uh, anyway,
artists
Shrek
used the
3,
comic as a
Shrek 5,
vehicle to
anyone?
discuss very real things like police brutality, at a time when
well,
conservative voices in Britain's media were calling for a crackdown on crime. The subject of over-policing had been the inspiration for a lot of early Judge Dredd stories.
I didn't know Judge Dredd
Originally
existed
more
before
for
this.
laughs, but as the years rolled on, this became less of a joke and more of an integral part of the Judge Dredd mythos. And in 1980, Judge Dredd met some villainous coppers who were so evil, they made him look like Sergeant Slipper by comparison.
Who's Sergeant Slipper?
This, of course, is the year that Judge
Oh,
Dredd
uh,
met the Dark Judges.
Hmm,
oh, real quick.
okay.
Even though I know a lot of people kind of when you think of Judge Dredd, you imagine someone that's willing to kill bad guys, right? And everything.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's the thing. Judge Dredd isn't actually all that aggressive. He actually does mellow out in time with the comics. It's just I think it's funny because when you imagine him, you think, oh, the judges are the judge, executioner, jury and executioner, right?
Yeah, judge, jury, and executioner. You think he
Yeah,
upholds the
yeah,
law no matter what. But if you're saying he's
yeah. He
mellows out, that kind of makes sense. But I usually think of, the Arbites from 40K with that. But yeah.
Yeah, the thing is, Judge Dredd actually does evolve as a character over time. Like I said, he's human, and they allow him to grow. Oh, also one more thing. Corpse starch is a thing in this universe. It's
Oh!
not called that, but it's a literal thing in this universe.
Well, we say that 40K takes from a lot, and goddamn do they.
Yeah, I learned that recently, that because of the
Oh.
overpopulation of the megacities, they have to deal with the bodies somehow.
Uh,
Eee. Hey, look, Judge Death, Pestilence, Fear, and all those losers.
story of the Dark Judges.
From Dredd's first appearance in Prog 2 of 2000 AD, he was shown to be busting all kinds of futuristic criminals. Robo-racists, solar snipers, bent
Oh.
judges. But when you consider
Makes
that
sense.
by the end of every story, the perp was either dead or sent off planet or put in the ISO cubes for the rest of their lives, there never really was an opportunity for Dredd to pick up a persistent villain of his own.
Yeah,
And how would that even work?
that's kind of like the same problem Punisher has. He can't have a persistent villain because he kills them all. That's his one thing. Robo-racist? I don't know if he means robots that were racist or people that were racist against robots.
Yeah, it's probably people against racist just robots. Here's the thing, Mac. Because it's a dystopian future. Humanity is essentially taught to be stupid. They're not taught how to read,
Oh.
write, and a lot of them are illiterate to the point where it's actually downright depressing.
Oh, God.
Keep the masses stupid because if they keep them stupid, they won't rebel.
Yep.
That is essentially what
kind
the
of
megacities
foil
are.
can you
lately.
create for the lawman of tomorrow? Whenever it looks like some perp has got the other hand, we always find out that Dredd was one step ahead of them the whole time.
Oh.
So rather than fighting against that and creating a villain who was opposed to Dredd's central ideology, you know, a Joker to his Batman, a Moriarty to his Sherlock Holmes, instead, John Wagner continued as far down Dredd's ideological pipeline as he could. A judge whose values and whose use of force actually lean in the same direction as Dredd's, but they go way beyond the logical endpoint into insane, crazy new levels.
There's always that kind of people, which makes this interesting when you have to fight this
Judge
sort of
Death first
lawful
appeared
evil.
in Prog 149 in January 1980. He was written by John Wagner and drawn by Brian Bolland. Wagner co-created
Breath your fate. Dear God, he looks absolutely horrifying.
That's because Judge Dredd and the rest, Judge Death, and the other ones are from a universe where things got so bad that the only crime you ever commit is living.
Oh.
That's why they're the worst things ever because you're alive. That's a crime.
Oh. Well, I can say one thing. You can tell where they got the inspiration for the Batman Who Laughs.
Yeah.
Judge
Too
Dredd,
bad
and
they
he
overdid
wrote
it.
a ton of all those big,
yeah, they overdid it a lot.
iconic Judge Dredd stories. But outside of Dredd, outside of British comics, he's probably best known to American audiences as the guy who wrote History of Violence, that comic that got the film with Viggo Mortensen in it.
Interesting.
American viewers are probably more likely to have heard of Brian Bolland. Undoubtedly, he is one of the all-time great exports of the British comics scene. And I know that you will know him best for Camelot 3000, but I do believe
Never
he
heard
did
of
draw a
it.
Batman story once.
Oh!
There's probably
Oh,
a
he
good
did
chunk
the
of
Killing
people whose
Joke.
perception of Dredd is formed by a few really iconic Bolland illustrations.
This looks really cool.
Judge Death is introduced as this spooky, ghostly murderer who's jaunting about in this macabre spin on the judge's uniform, giving real supernatural
dear
slasher
God.
vibes, but predating, well, all of them actually. Within the first few pages, the judges turn up and blast him away. But
Yeah.
he doesn't die. His disembodied spirit rises from his corpse, chats some breeze, and then pisses off.
What?
You have delayed me, but that is all. This city is evil, but I will cleanse.
What do you mean? How?
The debut of Judge Death also happens to be the debut of side division psychic super babe Judge Anderson. It's
Oh
Anderson
wait, she's from the movie. Oh.
Yeah, she's in the comic.
who figures out that Judge Death is actually an undead monster from a parallel dimension. The judges on Death's world created stricter and stricter laws to clamp down on crime, until they realised that all crime is committed by the living, and therefore the root cause of all crime is life. And so if the crime is life, then it would follow that the punishment is death. Judge Death and his judges had wiped out all life on their own world, and so they then tried to find ways to spread their version of justice to other worlds and other universes. Anderson is able to defeat Judge Death by holding his spirit form inside her head and then encouraging Dredd to mummify her in the miracle plastic boing. It is pretty funny because Judge Death is shown to be this like immaterial ghost who can phase through anything, but he can also be trapped inside of plastic. On the face of it, this isn't that monumental a comic. It's 3 progs long, it ends with the villain locked away forever. It doesn't actually feel like it stands out that much from any other late 70s or early 80s Dredd comic. Certainly, I don't think Wagner and Bolland had realised that they had created probably the most iconic villain in all of British comics.
I mean, usually people don't realise that.
Bolland's design is so iconic.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, his clean penwork here is just firing on all cylinders, doing so much heavy lifting. Judge Death is a monstrous reimagining of Judge Dredd. Taking more than a little inspiration from Kevin O'Neill's Torquemada, Judge Death is festooned with skulls and bones and
dead animal bits.
Pretty much.
I love his helmet design more than anything. The front of it is designed to look like
iron
a portcullis,
bars,
which on the face of it feels like something that you have on the front of a castle to stop people getting in. But in fact, portcullises were actually used at either end of a corridor to trap people so that you could then kill them. I don't know if this is a coincidence, but it's also the symbol of UK Parliament, and it's the logo for Customs and Border Control all across the Commonwealth.
Oh.
Is Bolland using the portcullis as a symbol for borderless policing? I don't know.
Maybe.
It certainly wasn't in the script, and he's never mentioned this in interviews, but I don't really think things like this happen by coincidence. It's obvious to say that Death is a dark mirror to Dredd.
Yeah.
You know, he is a Captain Black or a Nemesis Prime or a Venom. You know, he is what Dredd would look like.
He's quite literally the dark reflection of when you take things too far. Or that's
yeah, but also it's gonna get worse.
Oh boy.
If whatever
you have no idea
of morality that holds him back from being a genuine monster was one day lifted. A copper with all of the power and none of the accountability. I mean, this is interesting in itself because Dredd is essentially a symbol of what happens when coppers have lots of power and not very much accountability. In the few years on the run-up to this book, Little Towers, Blair Peach, William Stratton, James Kelly, these were victims of police brutality whose murders were never justified. In nearly every case, the police who killed these people never faced justice.
Oh, God.
Wagner is talking to the terrifying reality that a policeman can just kill you if they want to. And the establishment can just justify it after the fact. Judge Death is quite literally over-policing Maid Carnot.
Yeah, this got real fast.
Is flattened out into only 2 binary realities. There is only one crime, and there is only one punishment. He is the analogy of Judge Dredd turned up to 1,000 to make sure that those in the back can actually hear it, because they didn't realise it was a parody the first time around. It's another layer of abstraction, I'll give you that, but this is essentially the reason why I can never view Judge Dredd as a hero. Now sure, Judge Death is like the complete end point of the path that Judge Dredd is on, and it'll be a long time before he ever, if he ever reaches that extremity. But he's on his way.
Maybe. Like he said, Fable said, he does mellow out.
Yeah, because they start to
Wagner
see
established in
how
that.
flawed it is.
Yeah, that's the important part. No, that's a really good cover. But yeah, you, when it comes to a job, you gain more experience and you learn more things. That's just how it goes, you knows?
Does the Emperor thumbs down?
Oh my god.
First story that Judge Death can't die, so any real solution is always going to be finite.
Temporary.
It took a year and a half, but eventually it happened. Judge Death Lives was written by Alan Grant and John Wagner, again drawn by Brian Bolland. The story takes place between Progs 224 and 228, and it debuted in August 1981. After Death's defeat at the hands of a can of Boingo spray, this div is poking around in the museum where Anderson's body is on display.
Oh,
Turns out he's been
no.
coerced into releasing Judge Death by this cabal of dark judges who have come to Earth to free their boss, I guess. The comic itself is a bloodbath. The Dark Judges seal off a whole hab block with some kind of weird force field, and then go from floor to floor, indiscriminately just killing everybody they find. All 70,000 inhabitants of Billy Carter Block are guilty of the crime of life, and judgment
therefore they are
must be
judged.
carried out. We get pages upon pages of the Dark Judges just absolutely tearing through people. Those who manage to escape the building are then being burned to death against the force field, even being crushed against it by people rushing to get out from behind them.
Oh no.
There's this great moment when Anderson
God.
figures out how to get through the force field, so she phases her and Dredd through it, and then Death's like, Anderson. After some heavy and bitter losses, the judges of Mega City 1 do eventually start to gain the upper hand. And eventually the Dark Judges then flee back to their own dimension, which we now learn is called Dead World.
I'm
But
not
Dredd
surprised.
isn't happy to call that a win. There are already thousands of people dead in Mega City 1,
Oh,
and
no,
as
that's
we've
not a
learned
win.
about Dredd, he's not really the kind of person who lets these things go. He decides that he needs to chase the Dark Judges back to
What?
their own dimension before they have a chance to, reconsolidate and launch another attack.
I mean,
Dead
that's
World,
understandable.
as it's called, is exactly that. Everything is dead here. There are just piles of bones as far as the eye can see. As soon as they arrive, Anderson is assaulted by all the billions of restless souls of all the people that
Oh,
were murdered
God.
over the years. And in the final conflict, it is in fact these dead souls that allow Anderson to finish the fight.
Let the judge
With her
let the
forming a
judges be
conduit
judged.
for all of their anger, she is able to finally defeat the Dark Judges.
They definitely don't look like pushovers.
I think it's pretty obvious that Wagner and Bolland here are riffing off of the established Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse.
Oh yeah,
But
that was clear from the start because they specifically picked four and named one of them Death. You know, the last horseman shall ride on a pale white horse, and all of hell shall follow with him. Actually, that fits with the motif that the others came with him, or came later.
I'm going to get a bit esoteric here. The Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse are like these allegorical forces for, huge concepts that were...
Yeah, the pale rider, the black rider, the red rider, the white rider. These are all depicted in a certain way. Usually, the black rider has a scale of judgment. The red rider, meaning war, has his sword out. And for some reason, I don't know exactly why, but the white rider has a crown and a bow. This also shows up in Shin Megami Tensei. Funny enough.
outside of the control of normal people.
Also in Gundam, funny enough.
Oh, man.
War and famine and so on. But these are like the esoteric forces that were forming people's destinies when the Bible was written in like the first century in Rome. And I think that the Dark Judges are essentially the same thing, but they're recontextualized as modern horrors. Wagner and Bolland are giving form here to the same esoteric forces controlling the lives of proles, but recontextualized for inner city urban life, the forces controlling the lives of 20th century proles. The hab blocks of Megacity 1 were partly inspired by all these blocks of flats that we saw springing up in England after World War II.
Cool.
Which, by the 70s and 80s...
Oh, we're just learning about the dark judges from Judge Dredd, Platty. Nothing to see here.
We're looking pretty dystopian already.
Laddie, this is a robbery. I'm stealing all your monies. All your booze
Fire
money.
is an easy one.
Okay.
One fear which anybody living in a tower block has ever had to deal with is fire.
Okay.
Fire safety standards for low income...
I do like the Fred in my chat just said, I don't care how dark the judges are, I'm not paying my taxes. Oh my god, Platty. I'll move my mic a bit further away. I think I have a little too close.
Housing and public facilities has historically been pretty terrible.
Oh yeah, in cities, fires can get real out of control. Like in Texas, we don't have to worry about that too much because a lot of the buildings are spread around. But in, like, packed-in cities, the Great Chicago Fire is horrifying to know about.
They still are. But domestic deaths by fire were like 5 times higher 40 years ago than they are today. Maybe Wagner was inspired by the Summerland Leisure Centre fire of 1973. Or maybe he was inspired by the profusion of inner city fires in cities like Glasgow or New York during the 1970s. Whichever it was, there is no denying that fire is a deadly enemy to people who are forced into living in close proximity.
Oh yeah.
And so then it's no surprise that it's presented here as this abstract, deadly force outside of normal people's control. Personified as some sort of zombie horse, Judge Mortis's powers are rot and decay.
Oh.
Now, to my mind,
Pestilence.
that conjures up the images of urban decay.
Disease.
This is a phrase that was being used more and more throughout the 1970s and 80s to describe these post-industrial towns that were just falling into rot without government support.
Oh yeah.
These landscapes of crumbling concrete and rusted rebar, homes filled with black mold and fungus.
As someone that has to deal with black mold during my job, I'm not going to explain what it is, but yeah. Ugh.
These flats that I've been talking about, these estates, they were thrown up quick. They were made out of prefab parts, and sometimes these parts didn't even fit together properly. England is a wet country. Moisture would just soak into these buildings, and it would never quite dry. Mushrooms growing on the walls was quite a commonly used visual gag in British comics when I was growing up to indicate that people were poor. 2 decades of economic pressure and poor housing inspection saw a lot of these housing blocks in the UK falling into dangerous disrepair. The Hightown flats in Wrexham were so well known for their poor construction and poor upkeep. The council actually erected nets around the buildings to catch the chunks of concrete as they fell off.
That's horrifying.
The health risks associated with your house rotting inside and out feels very fitting for a horseman of the urban apocalypse.
Okay, last one. Fear.
Inside Judge Fear's helmet is a face so terrifying it can kill you by showing you your worst possible fears. Now, this might actually throw back to the very early Judge Dredd stories where anybody who ever saw Judge Dredd's true face was utterly horrified and usually later died. But I feel like the fact that the mask has this sort of cemetery gates kind of look, or like maybe the gates of Arkham, or even the gates of like a swanky gated community, I think there is something interesting coded into that.
Oh.
Fear is the most interesting judge to me. Everybody feels fear. In fact, fear's quite good.
It's
it
normal.
Motivates you into action. But I don't think fear's true power is in his spooky face. I think it lies in other elements of Bolland's design. His robes of office have these big pauldrons that look like bear traps. Bear traps also make up the tools of his trade, along with chains and padlocks.
Yeah.
I'm saying that if the Dark Judges have been specifically retooled here to represent the horrors the establishment can visit on the working class, then I think fear is the inescapable fact
It
of
does
being
have bear
locked
traps.
into this horror with no means of escape. I'm not sure how you would, or even if you could, design a Judge Poverty, but if you did, this would be it. I'm thinking back now to my earlier thoughts about Judge Death's portcullis mask, and that idea of being trapped, being unable to escape the judgment of these huge forces that you can never have any control over. And when the book shows us these sequences of all these people locked into these buildings, getting killed, getting crushed, panicking, climbing over each other to get out of this crazy, chaotic nightmare situation, it's that feeling of
Good
being
Lord.
trapped that comes through.
Oh, yeah. Definitely.
We had established early on that the Dark Judges are in fact undead. You cannot kill what does not live, etc.,
Yeah.
etc. And that's useful if you want a recurring villain as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the truth is, they will always be relevant as long as we still have those same injustices and inequalities that inspired their creation. And in May 1985, we saw them return. Four Dark Judges was written by John Wagner and Alan Grant, this time with art by Brett Ewins, Cliff Robinson, and Robin Smith. This isn't a Judge Dredd strip. In fact, this is the first standalone strip starring Judge Anderson.
Cool.
And told over 9 progs, it is longer than the previous 2 stories added together.
Cannot kill what does not live.
Anderson is still haunted by visions of Judge Death and of Deadworld. And I want to say here, I really like how Ewins portrays a lot of vulnerability when he's drawing Anderson. I don't remember if it was Alan Grant or John Wagner, but one of them said it was important to them that Anderson was a girl, that she wasn't just a bloke with tits. Anderson is a badass. She is tough as nails, but she is still a woman.
I get that from the first movie, honestly, or from that movie I watched. As
You
I
get
said
what,
before,
Matt?
that she has strong feelings, but she is still a badass.
Yee.
Yeah. She has her own character, but she's still a badass along with Judge Dredd.
And I like how Ewins shores that up by showing that she is soft and vulnerable at the same time as being strong.
Well, yeah, you can be
I will
both.
admit it is a little bit male-gazy. I'm pretty sure none of the other judges have ever had so much detail rendered into their bum cheeks.
I don't know. We'd have to go back and check some of those old Judge Dredd comics and see. That's a joke. I'm not actually going to do that. I don't have the time for that.
But still, it's there and it's good. Anyway, Anderson is convinced that her visions of Death's return aren't just dreams. And so she travels back to Deadworld to confirm whether or not the Dark Judges are in fact dead or alive. Or unalive. Whatever. It turns out it's a trap. The Dark Judges'
course.
bodies may have been destroyed, but their souls, like, hid in the ground or something. I want to say now, I just absolutely love the ghost forms of the Dark Judges.
just their
I love
heads.
the fact that it's just their disembodied heads floating around in these, like, necroplasm balloons. It really stretches the definition of a serious horror story when you've got these sort of goofy floating heads flying about. It is hilarious, despite the fact that Anderson is in very genuine mortal danger.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah.
they've tricked her into coming here
I'm
so
not
that basically
surprised,
they can
Platy.
like ride her back to Mega City 1. They end up back in the Big Meg, and it is absolute carnage, as you can no doubt imagine.
Oh, yeah.
They're absolutely tearing through crowds of people this time. But Anderson is no fool. She knows that you can't defeat the Dark Judges with physical force.
We couldn't fight back with brawn, so we used our brains.
I warned you not to use those things.
There's this big final showdown between Death and Anderson. They've been orbiting each other now for years. They've become bitter rivals, and I really like this as a big dramatic finale. really, Death is as much Anderson's villain as he is Dredd's. In fact,
Basically, quite literally, he is to show them what happens if they go too far. Which, you know, Batman and other such comics have that sort of theming. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
maybe more so. But anyway, they end up having this big dramatic finale in a supermarket, which is just so ludicrous. How can you not love it? It all ends well, of course. The status quo is restored. Ozzy went on stage and did a great show. The comic had only really just entered the era of setting up these longer plays and experimenting with longer term storytelling. And these brief, spooky little romps marked the beginning of not just the most iconic villains in Judge Dredd, but arguably the most iconic characters from British comics, full stop.
Also, I know, where is he getting these models from?
I actually
Worry
used to
about it.
dislike Judge Death. I thought that the supernatural element of the Dark Judges underpinned what was otherwise a very grim and gritty urban science fiction story. It just felt really silly to me. And what can I say? I was a very serious young man. I didn't really get the vibes, you know? I didn't like Ewoks. I didn't like Doctor Who. Oh yeah, I like Doctor Who now. But like Star Wars, Judge Dredd's world is wacky and fluid enough to be able to
Private
tell
Werewolf.
pretty much any kind of story. And actually, if you're able to integrate the kind of campier, sillier parts of him, along with the much grimmer and darker images of what he represents, there's actually something really special about Judge Death. We established that they can't die, so the Dark Judges would continue to appear as consistent villains both for Dredd and for Anderson. After this, they appeared in Necropolis and Batman Judge Dredd, both of which are future videos, by the way, and they continued being mainstay villains right through into the modern era. They're still around today.
Cool.
If you want to read these stories for yourself, I do not recommend hunting down the original progs. 2000 AD is not a comic that was really intended to last. They've all been collected a bunch of times in this mad, confusing mass of trade paperbacks. And actually, because of the long gaps between the publication of these stories, they're actually spread out over Judge Dredd Complete Case Files Book 3, Book 5, and Judge Anderson's Sci Files Book 1. They are, however, all collected in the Judge Death Lives volume of the Hatchet Mega Collection, but your best bet is the more recent Rebellion published Essential Judge Dredd Dredd vs. Death trade paperback.
Also, this scene right here looks
The Anderson
really cool.
story in that has actually been coloured, and it also includes some like really cool, interesting little B-sides and oddities just for more context. For my money, this book is by far the best entry point to read the stories that I've spoken about in this video. If you happen to be interested in the intersection between Judge Dredd comics and the history of real-life policing, then I highly recommend Michael Mulch's book, I Am the Law.
Oh, cool.
This is a really good look, not just at Judge Dredd comics, but also the increasing militarization of the police, both here in the UK and in America. This book is super inspirational. It's full of really useful little historical snippets. The bit at the beginning of my video where I spoke about the riot shields, I actually just lifted that wholesale from this book.
Oh.
And I do have a video coming out in the future where I basically just plagiarized an entire chapter of this. Madly recommended. Please go check this out. I'll put links in the description.
I'll say, yeah, this guy does great work. Holy hell. For some reason,
where you can get it.
There we go.
Thank you so much for watching this all the way to the end. If you like Judge Dredd and British comics, then please check out my previous uploads and subscribe, because I've got more coming out in the future. Finally, I'd like to give a huge thanks to the channel supporters.
Yeah, that was really cool. Do you think he got all of his information spot on, Fable?
Yeah.
It was good. So check him out, guys, if you want. Also this, Fable, do you think we'll ever be able to create a comic nearly as iconic now?
Probably.
Maybe one day. I have so many ideas in my head, but you never know.
Although I've been told many times that much of my work is sounds like more towards children, and I kind of agree.
More towards
Mhm.
what?
Towards children's
Oh,
stories,
well,
like silly things like that.
I mean, it can go either way. I honestly can do either. Sometimes I do really dark stories in my head, and other times I do really light stuff where I'm like, okay, I need a little break from that.
I know something about the Dark Judges, man.
What?
In one of the stories, it got so bad they actually killed over like 90% of humanity in that world. 70, I
Oh,
think. It was like a huge amount of people literally died, and at one point, because of what Judge Death did, multiple city blocks in Mega City 1 couldn't be inhabited because of how much radiation was there.
oh God.
Yeah, it took literally years for the radiation to subside and for them to be able to repopulate that again. That's how
So,
bad it got.
so here's what I'll say, everyone. If you want me to learn more about Judge Dredd, I am always willing to, but you gotta like, comment, and subscribe. And what is your favorite Judge Dredd character or moment? I'm curious down below. Anyway, anything more to say, Fable?
Um, Please help. I need a tablet. I want to draw on the computer again.
Anyway, and to all of you who leave to all of you who leave suggestions on the Discord, well, those videos are more than likely for me to watch, but I'll usually watch them offline if I can, because watching them on stream, because some of you leave some really long videos, will not be possible. If I was a full-time streamer, I would do it all the time, and hell, if I get the chance to become a full-time streamer thanks to you guys, what I'll do is a 24-hour reaction stream. I might go completely insane, but it'll be fun to watch for a bit. But anyway, thank you all so much, and I appreciate every single one of you. We'll see you later. Bye-bye.